9:05, we'll call this meeting of Wichita County Commissioners Court to order. Everyone please rise.
Pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together this morning and discuss the business of this county. Let your hand be with us, Father, as we make decisions that affect the citizens of our community. Be with each and every employee we have, Father. Keep those that expose themselves to harm safe and protect them, Father. Be with our men and women overseas as they fight for the freedom that we enjoy in this country. Father, we pray for rain this morning. We ask that you send it our way, Father, as our land is dry. Father, we ask that you forgive us of our sins and where we fall short. All of these things we ask in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thanks, Sister. Next, we'll take action on the consent agenda. Did you find out on you call on the truck bill?
I had a brief comment. He said that he would pull the invoice and he would call me back. So, with that being said, let's remove item number 9.
Judge, I'd make the motion that we approve consent agenda with the removal of item number 9.
Second.
Any comments, questions, anyone on consent agenda items?
That number 15, that Healthcare Coalition memorandum of sharing, what is that exactly?
It's working with the Regional Hospital Advisory Group, and it's simply, that's going to be where they're wanting to pass some money, those pay for some items to go on that big pickup we've got with that grant money in the emergency operations. So this have to have the MOU with them to agree to account for and take care of it. So we will cooperate with them. We've been working on it. Meredith's been a fair amount of time, and they had an account and got everything. They had written it primarily to deal with other medical providers, and we're not medical providers. So.
Well, that was kind of my question, because with that being our emergency management, but I don't think of that as being a trauma deal. So anyway, great, that's good.
There's another name for the North Central Texas Trauma Regional Advisory Council. Is that what we refer to as the hospital district? All that stuff, all the emergency stuff, the trailers, it's got hospital district on the side of it, all the morgue, the travel morgue, the air conditioning, the
That
tents.
came out of the predecessor to this. This is a different group, but it was the same kind of thing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then all that stuff, all that equipment, from what I understand, costs the county nothing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that was a good cooperative.
That's some nice stuff too.
Cooperative with Wichita Falls and Wichita County received an account for that and made it available. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Beecham, second by Commissioner Watts to approve consent agenda with removal of item number 9 for Commissioner Harden's working for clarification on that. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried 5-0.
You're done, Margaret.
Item number 1 on general business is review and approve waiving bills for payment.
Yes, we reviewed invoices on Friday. I'd make a motion that we pay our bills.
Second.
Any questions or comments on any of the bills? Motion by Commissioner Waller, second by Commissioner Beecham to approve the regular bills for payment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries 5-0. I told him, let's try Brian, but I want to get maybe closer to 10:30. Brian, Woody Gallison, we were in the Commissioner Court session with you, and we're down to your item.
Hi, Judge. I'm gonna shut my door.
All right.
All right, just let me know where you want me to begin, or if you just have questions for me. Assuming you have the alternates that I pulled together at the court's request and provided those, and I was just looking over an update on the Shaw County claims to see how you've been doing since we last took a look at this when we set the renewals back in May with the tentative renewal for the Shaw County since you're one day. And I will report to you that when we looked at this back in May, which is when we set all of the rates that go to the board for the 10-1 renewals, we're using 12 months worth of claims through April. Wichita County's loss ratio was at 107%. The loss ratio is basically your paid claims divided by the contributions made by the county. And that's just straight up paid claims. It doesn't take into the administrative fees. We're at break even on the loss ratio when we're achieving about a 94% loss ratio, meaning about 6% of the contributions, or 6 cents on a dollar, goes through to the administration of the claims, the network, what we pay Blue, and what we do to administer your account. So we're at break even at 94. We're currently running at that time at 107% loss ratio. The next 3 months that we got from May, starting with May, we're at a loss ratio of 84, so that looks really good, trending in the direction you want to see it. But then the next 2 months we're at 100% and 114%. So the total loss ratio for the 12 months ending July of 2018 is at 104. Now the good news is that's down 3 points from the 107. The bad news is those last 2 months don't look too good. I'm looking at an updated report for your high-cost claimants, and just a high-level summary of your high-cost claimants. You've got 2 claims over $200,000, 2 claims over $150,000, and 5 claims over $100,000, with 22 or more claims over $50,000. There's a mixture of claims in there. Cancers and musculoskeletal are the top 2 diagnostic conditions that I see for your county. That isn't any different than what we're seeing for our book of business for the pool, fully insured pool as a whole. Cancer is #1 diagnostic category, and musculoskeletal, MSK as I call it, is usually 1 or 2 right behind cancer. So, and I'm looking at these high-cost claimants, and 20 of the top 25 high-cost claimants are all ongoing, meaning that we got claims in June and July on those top claimants. So the fact that we saw this loss ratio in the last 2 months at 100 and 113, looking at these active claims doesn't give me any hope that that's going to trend in a different direction anytime soon. So that leads me to the tentative renewal that we had set for Wichita County was at 5.3%. That's slightly above the pool average. The pool average was 2.9. So at 107% loss ratio, you're trending on the high side. You're not contributing enough contributions to pay the claims, and your renewal was slightly above the pool average at 5.3. I don't see that changing much, if any at all, when we get the August claims, which we use August claims, the 12 months ending August, to set your final renewal that goes out in September. So then what I did when I calculated the alternates for y'all is I used that 5.3% in the renewal estimate. And do you have that alternate sheet in front of you there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what you'll see is current plan, and then the renewal rates factor in that 5.3 that we have penciled in. And then I provided an alternate option 1, moving from a $2,000 deductible to a $2,500 deductible. That in essence is the only change to that plan, and you'll see the rates there. And then I threw in the same deductible, but I added a $250 deductible on the RX side, so bumping it from $100 to $250 for the RX deductible, and you'll see those rates. And then the third option moves us to a $3,000 deductible plan and adds a specialist copay. Well, I should back up. Option 2 also added a specialist copay of $50, going up from 40 to 50. So option 3 goes to a $3,000 deductible, adds a specialist copay at $50, so it keeps the RX deductible at the same place as you currently have at $100, and that's the third option there. So that's what we're kind of looking at, and I'll stop and see what questions or comments that y'all have for me.
So if we stuck with our current plan, we'd go from $717.32 a month to $755.34 for employee only. So that's really a $40 increase just under the current. Now with the option 1, that premium, and I'm reading this out loud, Brian, for the audience here, that everybody doesn't have a copy of this. And I'm really talking the employee only right now, would be $725.12, and that's with the $2,500 deductible, and continuing with the $100 initial prescription payment on the plan. Then the option 2 changes to $700.30 a month, and has the $50 specialist office copay, and then $250 initial payment for prescriptions. And then the option 3 is $702.46 and raises the deductible to $3,000 and has the $50 specialist copay in it, but reduces the out-of-pocket for your initial prescription down to $100.
It also drops the co-insurance max in, Judge.
Oh, okay.
$43.50 to $41.50.
Sure does, yes.
I was looking for the reason why it was $2 higher.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably it.
Brian, why did you not stay with the $300 emergency room? Why did you go to $150?
That was an error. You may be looking at the first sheet that I ran, and when I ran it, I didn't change the emergency room copay to match Wichita County's custom copay. So the emergency room copay does not change. It stays at $300.
All the way across.
And then we pay it, we take care of that, Lee, in our HRA on submittals.
What are these calculations on the sheet that I'm looking at based on 150 or based on 300?
Based on 300. The calculations are based on 300. I just failed to change the ER copay because Wichita County has a custom ER copay. And I would like to comment on the coinsurance max. You're correct in that it dropped from $43.50 to $41.50, but please note that the out-of-pocket maximum does go up on that option 3, because when you add in that $3,000 deductible plus the $41.50, you're at $7,150 out-of-pocket max, not counting the $100. So we need to add in the $100. So $72.50 is a total out-of-pocket max in option 3. On option 2, you have a $2,500 deductible with a $43.50. That's $68.50. Well, I have the RX deductible on that one, so you're at $7,100. So option 2 has a lower maximum out of pocket of $7,100. Option 3 has a maximum out of pocket of $7,250. And you account for both medical and RX deductibles under coinsurance.
Brian, on the 104% that we are at today, is there a breakdown between the medical portion and the RX portion of that figure?
Yes, there is. Well, I have a breakdown of the total paid, and the total paid for the 12 months on pharmacy is $1.2 million. To be exact, $1,223,594 is the total pharmacy paid. And the medical paid is $3.6 million, so $3,602,377. Let me take a look at that real quick.
So it's 1/4 of our
25%, yeah, it's almost 25% exactly. That I'll tell you how that compares to our book of business. Runs, the fully insured group runs right around 27% pharmacy. And you're running around 25. So that's a good number. Because the pharmacy really is what's been hitting the fully insured pool is the pharmacy trend, the cost increases we were seeing on just the inflation on generic and brand drugs, not to mention the high cost specialty, which is the reason for our pharmacy change that we're making. But your share of that is just a couple of points lower, which is good. It's not so much the pharmacy that's hurting Wichita County as it is the cancers and the musculoskeletal. I will tell you that we're putting in a value-based benefits plan design for our fully insured groups, which is through a ROSTI. ROSTI treats musculoskeletal, and we're changing that from, instead of being subject to deductible, we're making it subject to the office visit copay, which in y'all's case would be $40. So we're trying to remove that barrier for members who are experiencing pain from musculoskeletal to getting in and getting some treatment. And as a first course treatment if surgery isn't required.
They talked about putting in a clinic here, but I don't know where we are on that. It was mentioned last year. That would make it a lot more available.
Yeah, the closest is in Denver right now.
And if there isn't a provider there, a ROSTI provider there in the area, we can bring them in. So one of the things that we're talking about is a county hosting a ROSTI for a day. We would schedule appointments and make that available to counties in the surrounding area. And then ROSTI would come up and be able to treat patients. So that's something that we can do to make it more accessible, that ROSTI is willing to do for us.
Well, the presentation they did last year was really interesting. It sure made us think about it.
I tell you what, we have had success. They are a network provider, and we have members going to them today. And what we looked at prior to making our recommendation to move to this value-based copay benefit, we looked at our claims data and we looked at Blue Cross and Blue Shield's book of business for their ROSI providers. And we're seeing a reduction in several areas. One, average number of visits before a person is considered, healed, not having the pain, is 3.5. And we're seeing a reduction in high-tech imaging, and we're seeing a reduction in surgery. So we're also going to be promoting ROSI as kind of a second surgical opinion. If your doctor is saying that you need back or knee surgery or shoulder or whatever that musculoskeletal surgery is, we're suggesting you go see an ROSI provider, let them evaluate you and see if they can help you. Of course, if it's surgery is needed to repair something, then they're not gonna help you. But based on that evaluation and range of motion tests and other things, they say they can relieve that pain. Well, you're going to pay $40 a visit. Could be much better in 3.5 visits as opposed to a surgery. And when we see back surgery, we normally see a second back surgery 3 years later. So we're really looking forward to ROSI addressing some of the MSK that we're seeing in our groups. What we'll do is we'll evaluate it a year later and look at the claims data with this new benefit. And if it continues to show what we're seeing, then we'll just reduce that copay maybe even more to say $10 or something less to encourage our members to utilize that service prior to any type of treatment. So that's going to help some of your high claims. The cancer that y'all are seeing, some of your cancer is preventative, and I should say your cancer, not your cancer. Some of the cancer we're seeing in the pool is preventative because it's tobacco related or weight related or things like that. But you've got a mix of cancer at Wichita County, so I would say some of it can be addressed through prevention, but not all of it. Some of it's just random bad luck. And that's the nature of high claims. So when I talk about the randomness of high claims, that's part of our renewal formula. We will shock out, if you will, or set a pulling point in which we'll pull out some high claims, because you've had no control of that. We don't factor that into the formula. And we're pulling out about $250,000 in claims, about $246,000 in claims that we aren't factoring in at all when we're setting that renewal rate for the county, knowing that it's just completely random and should drop off your list in time.
And Brian, when is the drop dead date as to making a decision on which option or plan to renew with?
I should know that off the top of my head, but if you give me 1 minute, I'll look that up for you.
Well, it's got to be no later than next month because we've got the pre-enrollment and people have got to know what the reduction's going to be. So I'm going to say at the latest, 10/1.
Well, we need to put his budget.
Well, we've covered that by budgeting the highest amount.
Right.
That we're good for, and then we use the difference to pay the HRA. Have you all set any kind of a date yet that you're aware of for the benefit enrollment?
It is,
Usually
I can't
October.
remember if it's the second week in November. I believe it's the second week in November, but I would not quote me on that. I know it's in November.
It's going to be, okay.
Yes.
So to get all the materials prepared, I'm going to say we need to make a decision sometime in the next 30 days.
I'm sorry, Judge, what was the date that y'all were thinking about for the open enrollment meeting?
No, November, early November.
Okay. I was just looking at the calendar for our 1/1 anniversary day. We have, we're going to use August claims to take one more look at it, so we'll have the renewals finalized in September. And then we require a response back no later than November 9th. So of course, if you're wanting open enrollment meetings in early November, then the sooner, we would need a response sooner to pull those materials together for you all.
Okay.
Brian, is there,
The date is November 9th.
Brian, is there an industry standard that you're seeing from a insurance perspective in the marketplace today that the commonplace deductible, or that seems to be the go-to deductible, that the single / family deductibles are running?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 answers if I can.
Okay.
For our counties, we're seeing a deductible more in the $1,500 to $2,000 range for the most common deductible. Again, recognizing that counties really value the benefits that they offer to their county employees and have held on to that. So counties have had and always had, for as long as I've been in the business, richer benefits. When you look in the commercial market, that $2,500 to $3,000 is the range I would say for your commercial market business. And then if you just went to the exchange and looked at the health care that's offered through the Affordable Care Act to individuals, it's in the $5,000 deductible range.
And then, Brian, on ours, why do we stop with the option at $3,000? Are there abilities to look at the difference in that higher deductible under this plan?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Well,
$3,000 because in our standard PPO plans, that's the highest deductible we have.
I see.
A little higher, we have what you would call our health reimbursement accounts or our health savings accounts, and we have deductibles that go all the way up to $5,000. So, yes, I could quote you a higher deductible plan. I always try to avoid making too big of a jump, so when I ever get estimates or alternates, I don't like to move from a $1,000 deductible to a $3,000, and I think moving from a $2,000 to a $3,000 is a pretty big jump, and I'd recommend you make those changes in increments. But could I give you some quotes for a higher deductible? Yes, they would fall under what we call our HRA accounts, which I understand you're already administering on the back end.
Yes, the change that you show us here has relatively no effect on our employees because of the participation in the HRA. It just has an effect on the premium that we pay.
It saved us last year.
It saved us a tremendous amount last year, and so the jumping from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 is an increase, but the savings benefit in the premium, the employee doesn't feel any change in that because we have a standard deductible within inside our HRA.
Can I ask how much you're contributing today through the HRA?
Well, if you look at what this is our first year to participate, and we buy back down the employees' out-of-pocket to $700. And we've done that with the initial change in this insurance that we saved just over $600,000 when we made the change to move to the higher deductible. In lieu of having a $700 deductible employee-wide, we raised that deductible. We took the savings in the premium and banked it, and then as it stands today, our estimate on what we'll spend reimbursing the HRA to employees that have met both the out-of-pocket and met their 20% copays, are going to be somewhere just over $100,000. So it's been a good plan for us, and I would assume it's also been a high-year plan implementation for us as well. So not to say that it couldn't get worse, but it sounds to me as that we have had a lot of participation with illnesses that we've had to reimburse for, running at current levels 104%. So we should anticipate that be in that same area next year with those reimbursements, I would hope. Now, changing this deductible and eating those costs depending on what the court decides to leave the employee's deductible at, it will certainly erode our savings, but it will still be hopefully an overall savings.
Well, we made the employees whole a year ago, and the question's going to be, can we continue to do it?
Can we continue to do it?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to start hitting a gap. We talked about this, that if we lower our premiums and our claim history continues, then someplace we're going to start making, that's going to cause a jump in the rates again.
I can provide you quotes from two of our health reimbursement accounts. We have a $3,500 deductible, and we have a $5,000 deductible. Those health reimbursement accounts reimburse at 100% after the deductible is satisfied. So it's really, once the deductible is satisfied, it's a good plan from a member perspective, and the preventative is still covered at 100%. I'm trying to look real quick here. Maximum out of pocket was $7,200 on option 3 and $7,100. Well, I don't know how much it's going to help you, because really, in essence, even though it's a higher deductible, the maximum out of pocket is slightly lower. But I could run those options and see if they're going to improve your rates, and if so, I can send those to you. I would like to make a comment, and Renisha may have commented on this before. The model in which y'all are employing, moving to a higher deductible to buy down the premium, and then to reimburse the members so that they don't feel the effect of it. You're waiting on that. You're paying out less in that reimbursement than what you're saving in premiums. I think that's a good plan and a nice approach. People call it different things, partial self-funding or what have you. The one thing that I would note is that you're not encouraging consumerism like you would expect to get out of a higher deductible plan. The concept is, move to a higher deductible plan, it shifts costs to the member, so the member gets more engaged in the decision-making around accessing health care and making decisions about having this high-tech imaging versus maybe trying an alternative like a Rosti or even selecting the most cost-effective. And if you're shielding your members from that move, then you're really not engaging in a consumerism. So I would suggest that if you are moving your deductible up and saving premium, you need to also consider shifting some of that to your members also.
And we've discussed that, Brian, and the court has yet to decide where they want to do that, and we're going to rely on our benefits coordination team to help us with that math to see what those overall savings. But we did discuss that last week, that the need to maybe raise up from the $700 did exist, and that we needed to prepare ourselves to look at what that overall cost would be.
Brian, the one thing that I think would affect that is, in our community, we get closer to being a one service provider, and we don't have a Rosti available here. We don't have a lot of those choices. If you were living in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, there's lots of places to go and lots of different options. And that's not exactly true here, so I think it would have less effect on us than it would somebody that had more options available for service. Not saying that that's not a true statement and that it wouldn't work, but it's going to be a little more difficult for us being isolated.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that comment. I'm gonna take a look at where your top facilities are today and see where your members are accessing care.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, that's a valid comment, but let's see where they're really going. Let's see where the top 20 are going.
But I think what you're saying is trying to get them more consumer order. We're not talking about the penalties for those that continue smoke and all of those things that you could tag those small amounts on that can have long-term. But what you're saying is, are they shopping to say, I can have an MRI done here for $3,500 or I can have it done somewhere else for $900? Some of those kind of things. But I don't know if they know how to get access to those tools.
Well, then when you do the $900 one and the doctor says, well, I can't tell anything about it because the quality's not as good, then you're back to square one.
Yeah, sure.
And that does happen.
That happens
You
a lot.
got to be very careful about that.
Aren't the MRIs pre-approved?
Well, I would assume.
Well, but the problem is when the doctor says, well, I
And there is
understand
a-
you did the MRI, but we need to go here and do it
Yeah.
because their quality of machine is so much greater and better, and
There is a
I can
difference.
envision that.
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of both. It does prevent members from just jumping straight to that high cost when that lower cost would work. And if the lower cost doesn't give you the results you want, we still prefer to go that route than jumping straight to the high cost. And then there are a big variation in just the cost on those, whether it's done at one facility or a freestanding imaging center. So it's a little bit of both.
But you can ask the provider, what are my alternatives to get that MRI done? So they might have 2 or 3 different providers, and they might tell you, don't go to X or Z.
And I think that is as big a training program as our healthy alternatives,
Oh, absolutely.
because, you know, that's something I wouldn't question my doctor on if he said, hey, go here and do this. I don't typically even acknowledge the fact that I have the ability to question that. And I think as users of medical services, we've just not been schooled in that train of thought.
Well, it's not what we're used to.
No, we,
So, and a lot of times the doctor doesn't know either.
Yeah.
The doctor has no idea on the frame of reference on the cost of those and the difference in
Right.
price. And they do want to know because more and more doctors now are being schooled because there's a movement from the traditional payment schemes where you provide a service and you get paid, and there's more now movement towards total episodic care and reimbursement where the doctors are incentivized for being efficient, and so they appreciate that additional information because sometimes they don't know it. They especially don't know it on the cost of drugs.
And sometimes the doctors own it, which could be a difference.
Now, one of the things we didn't mention
That's a problem. That's a problem too. Yeah.
to the audience, I want to be sure they understand that as we look at the employees' rate going down, this also lowered all the other rates for dependents. So that is a plus side of this. The other thing, Brian, I think we understood from one of our conversations, either with you or Ramisha, that the health reimbursement account covers employee and any dependents or anyone else on, even would cover retirees, I believe. Is that correct?
yes, it would, because we're a county over 75,000.
Right. Well, we have to let them on the plan, but I didn't know if we had to give them access because the retirees, anyone that's not, we're not paying for.
Up to,
No, that's what I'm trying, no, if there's a difference on our employees, then we are changing the plan and we are saving money on the premium we're paying out. Retirees pay nothing to us other than a small amount of the COBRA fee. We're not getting enough to then cover, all of a sudden giving them $3,500 reimbursement.
but I'm under the understanding, Judge, that the only people that we have on our plan after retirement or separation from the county is people up to the age of 65.
That's correct. Your
Yeah.
post 65 are on County Choice Silver.
Correct, but that other group that had 20 years retirement and elected to stay on our health care are allowed to do so until they're 65. And for some of them, that's a fair period of time. Now, are they eligible also for the health reimbursement account?
That's a county policy.
That's county policy whether to let them be eligible.
Yeah.
I was under the impression through Ramisha that because we were a county over the population of 75,000, that we had to offer that, and they did participate in our HRA the same as an employee did.
We need to get that clarified because
I will clarify it because I think there's a distinguishing on the age. Is it you have to offer it to post 65 or versus having to offer it to all retirees? But just to confirm, you're covering your pre-65 retirees today on your active group policy.
they are paying their premium, but they're included in the plan. And they tend to be a more expensive group.
Which you would expect.
Yeah. So we need to find it out because the impact of that is significant with the employees. We are having some savings in this that we're doing, but we're not gaining anything with the retirees that are in between that 20 years and 65 when they're eligible for Silver Choice and Medicare.
Well, let me just confirm what you're required to do for your pre-65 group. You have your pre-65 on your active group, and your post-65 have County Choice Silver available. So you're meeting that requirement. We just need to confirm what you are obligated to do for your pre-65 since you're offering coverage. And I do believe that that's a county policy.
Yeah.
You do not have to cover your pre-65.
I received.
We'll confirm, and if you are covering them, how do you have to treat them since
Yeah.
they're on your active group? So I would just feel better if I could get back to you on those.
Okay, well, Brian, Luann Yarberry with Higginbotham that is administering that plan for us I just received a text for her, said she was on her way here. She'd gotten tied up in an earlier meeting. But she may have that information also, but I'd love to have it confirmed the same way by both of you.
Yeah, let me just confirm that, and you can check that with her as well.
Okay.
So our pre-65 retirees, let me see if I get this straight, they are participating in the refund or the
Today.
buy-down of the.
They're allowed to.
They're allowed to.
We're under the impression
The
of
post
that.
ones on the silver plan are not, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We shouldn't have any post-65 on our plan since they're offered Medicare and the Silver Choice.
Silver Choice.
They pay those directly, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Brian, just to be clear about when the proposals before us offer the child and multiple children, the spouse, and then family, there are no other alternatives out there to consider dependents on employees that can be brought in second party to our insurance. For example, if our insurance was only employee-only driven, and we looked at another plan that was dependent-only plan, is that possible, feasible, doable?
No, it's not.
Is that a federal rule or law?
Let me just say that we would not do that. We wouldn't want to carve the two out, and we wouldn't offer that. Other than a premature birth, your dependents, your children help your plan.
Yeah.
Right.
And we try to encourage as much dependent enrollment as possible because they're healthy, like I said, other than that premium that could hit you for $1 million in their first 6 months of life. But so we wouldn't carve them out. I think that would cause your employee-only loss ratios to spiral out of control, and you see your dependents, trending normally if you had good rates where it encouraged dependent enrollment. So we try to make sure dependents are on the plan, and we try to set the rates in such that employees would be encouraged to add dependents to the plan.
But that's typically and historically never where we've been. We don't have dependent coverage on our plan from the simple standpoint as no one can afford it.
I think that's why we added the Child Plus One to try to make it more affordable.
We did, and we did pick up a little bit of participation there.
So what I'm hearing you say, in a way, if you've got your children on this plan, they're suffering from our 104% claim ratio.
Well, if we had more children on there, our claim ratio would improve.
But the ones that are on there are paying a higher premium because of our high loss ratio.
So we don't have any children on our.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And very few children.
I'm looking at your high cost claimants right now, and there's only one dependent on your high cost claimant list that I read off to you earlier. I take that back too. 2 dependents on your top 25, and they're not in the top 10. So it's not your dependents that are hurting you.
No, we're hurting them.
No, yeah, we understand.
We're making their insurance more expensive.
We are.
Well, years ago, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I don't disagree. I think if they were in the commercial market, they're going to be seeing rate increases bigger than what you're seeing.
Well, that's just it, and that's just these are just sheer numbers. That's not saying that there's anything available out there that's going to, offset that. But just from the sheer numbers, we are.
But what I wondered about is there high, using your line of thought that typically those aren't your expensive people on insurance with very high deductibles and maybe lower premiums and a participation within a form of HRA, whether it's ours or a supplemental HRA, you would think would make greater sense, at least give a person a sense of security if they're going to be faced with $100,000 plus surgery or illness of some type.
Yeah, it makes sense to us. We're in the business, but absolutely, a $700 out of pocket to have a dependent on there for $175, I would absolutely do it.
Yes, but that's typically not the case, and very minimal as far as dependents go. Family coverage is far more important, and we're asking employees to pay basically $1,100 per month to include the rest of their family. That's their spouse and their children onto a plan of this. It's they still have to pay the electricity bill and the insurance, and
Can't afford it.
They can't afford it, and that's what it boils down to.
No. So we do need to. I think I like the model. I like that the county providing the HRA type of reimbursement on the back end. I will definitely get y'all the higher deductible plan alternates, so you have those. And the rates are becoming over time unsustainable for sure. Yeah.
But I understand you to say that you're thinking that going up that ladder on that higher deductible is going to be a little diminishing returns.
Wash, really.
Yeah, is what I understand you. I understand that's your speculation anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it worked last year. It was a good move.
Yeah, it was a good move for us
It
to,
saved us last year, as a matter of fact.
coming out from under a grandfathered status as we were and making that change. It was a windfall at that time. Now, how long we can hang on to any of those savings, it's going to be short-lived, but nevertheless, it was something we had to do because we couldn't afford it to be there, find ourselves there today.
I haven't looked at the alternate HRA plans, but, I like the 1,500 with the RX deductible. I think you'll need to consider moving to the specialist copay.
Right.
Yeah, probably.
Another area that's going to help try to manage, care so that members are going to their primary care physician first before a more expensive provider. And you get a pretty good bang for your buck on making a change to the RX deductible, because that's first dollar. Everybody's going and getting drugs, not everybody's going to their doctor. And you have a non-grandfathered plan, so your preventive is covered at 100%, so those children and keep going to the doctor and stay healthy.
Well, Brian, that was good information. I appreciate it and well spoken.
I will get you the alternates, those additional alternates, send that your way. I will confirm the questions we have about your pre-65 that are on your group policy right now. And then once I send that to you, then you just let me know when you need me. Again, I can be on the phone, or, if we schedule it, I can be there in person.
Okay.
Very good.
Brian, Luann Yarberry from Higginbotham has joined us, and she had it.
I just have a question. Are you going to quote an HSA, Health Savings Account Plan?
Did you hear that, Brian?
No, just barely asked.
She asked if you were going to quote an HSA plan.
I was going to quote an HRA, man. I was going to do a $3,500 deductible and a $5,000 deductible HRA plan.
Okay.
Do you want me to add an HSA to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Do-
Add the HSA.
Make a 100% plan.
100% plan?
Yes, they both are, actually. Once the deductible is satisfied, they reimburse at 100%.
That's what we want to see.
Okay, we asked Brian a question while he was going to look into the group of people we have who have retired with 20 years from the county but are still on our health plan. Do we have to include them in the HRA reimbursement?
If you're offering the same exact plan to them, then you should include them in the HRA, but that's a discussion that we can have offline to decide how you want to handle that, and we'll look at the legalities of all that.
Okay, yeah, because that one we need to look into, because in discussing this, they're not saving us anything. We're lowering their premiums and moving the direction we are, but if we have to start paying that out, we've got to figure that cost into
That's
this.
what funded the account.
Yeah.
Was the savings.
We were initially under the impression that maybe we could move away from that offering of no longer allowing people to leave our employment and then still carry our coverage. But now we've learned that maybe since the size of our county is over 75,000, that we do have to offer that to someone leaving our employment if they so choose to pay for our insurance. Now, whether they participate in HRA as part of it.
And that's what we need to look into, because you do have to offer those folks that use the COBRA. So we'll have to look at the difference between the retirees and the COBRA.
But if we offer a plan but a different plan, possibly that would take us out of that? Okay, then we'll look at that. Okay, well, Brian's going to look into that, so what he comes up with, and we appreciate you doing the same.
So, just for my clarification, if someone is terminated from the county and chooses to remain on COBRA for 18 months, are they then eligible for the HRA just like anyone else when they're participating in COBRA?
That is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the
Once again, they'd be funded. I think that's the difference.
Go ahead, Brian.
I just think Cobra is very expensive.
Brian, one last question that I have is what you see, and I know you see quite a few county participations, and maybe you have a feel for the open market as well, but what are you seeing in the form of employees sharing in the cost of their premiums that counties bear today / real world bear today?
Is there an order?
Yeah, I'm going to caveat it, because we're just a different world for counties than the commercial market. And still a good portion, near half of our counties are grandfathered, which means they couldn't make any cost shifting changes since the Affordable Care Act 2009. So therefore, a good portion of our counties are still paying 100% of the EO rate.
Now, they could do that to the tune of 5% annually, couldn't they?
Not if you're paying 100%. The Affordable Care Act is really kind of didn't want people to stay grandfathered. So if you had a flat rate, and you're already contributing 100%, any change to that would have impacted the grandfathering status. So we have a lot that are still paying 100%, but we are slowly seeing some employers shifting some of that cost for non-grandfather plans, and it's not a whole lot at the end of the day. It's $30 a month, maybe.
Right.
On average, and I don't, I think it's different in the commercial market, and Luann would probably give you some perspective on that. But I do know in the commercial market they're cost shifting, and the employees are paying more, and they're paying more, even on a percentage based on their pay. The more they get paid by their employer, the higher the percentage they have to share and pay of their insurance.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people since this discussion's been going on, because this is one of the toughest things we deal with every year. And the trend I'm seeing out in the private sector is that certainly I don't find many examples. In fact, I don't think I've found one where it's 100% that picked up the employee not participating in it. That certainly seems to be the trend. Luann, I guess you run into that too.
You're correct.
And it goes back to what you said, Brian, it's just becoming unsustainable.
Just can't do it.
Right.
It'll eventually eat us all if it goes with it.
I'll make one more comment towards that as well. We were talking earlier about the consumerism and don't want to lose out on that opportunity of consumerism. You made me think of this again as we were talking about the cost shifting even in the premium. We looked at, I mentioned that we still have grandfather plans and we have non-grandfather plans. We just looked at comparing our grandfather plans to our non-grandfather plans, and we do have the plans that are non-grandfathered as a whole are performing better than our grandfather plans. There's a lower cost on a paid PEPM for our non-grandfathered, and just the utilization is lower for our non-grandfather plans. And again, I attribute it to, I guess it could be two things. One, I think it's employees are becoming more aware of the costs and they're becoming better consumers. I guess you might also argue that maybe they're just getting crushed out of it. I don't know which is which, but anyway, just a side note.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would, hey, Brian, a curious question I just thought of here. When you said priced out of it, you made me think. We have very few of our employees who are able to carry their dependents unless they're in the grandfathered group. But I'm wondering if there's a larger number of those that are retirees that are the younger ones have more dependents, or is it just a spouse on there? Can you give any feeling on that?
I don't know. I'd have to take a look.
Okay. I'm just thinking that, okay, if I retire that young at 20 years and I go into a second career, I'm probably using my retirement to pay for my health insurance for myself and my family.
Right. Yeah, I would think so.
Commissioner Watts brought this up. He said it's terrible to realize that now our health insurance is more costly than most of our home household payments, to pay for our mortgage. That's
Something.
what's upside down in the world. So, all right, any other comments or questions for Brian?
You know, my wife's a school teacher, and she has like a $2,300 deductible. And you know the type of salary school teachers make. And so it's nice that the county is still able to contribute that $1,300 that you're contributing today.
Well, you know, if the state program, you know, if you retire, I believe the retiree from the state, their plan is still 100% paid for, and their spouse is 50% paid for. Kind of interesting.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Brian, does your wife share in the cost of her coverage?
Yes. She also has to pay for her premium, part of her premium. Small rural school district.
Yeah. Well, we're still, Wichita County is considered rural, but I think all of our ISDs, their personnel participate in that premium cost.
We just want to make sure we're on the right track and doing the smart move when we ask employees to contribute and have some form of game plan in place to at least defray these costs without just going in there without a plan.
Right.
All right, so we appreciate it very much.
Luann, and the rest of you there, I just confirmed I'm going to add the HSA to it, and I would put the our lowest deductible HSA, which is a $5,000. So I'm going to put a $3,500 and a $5,000 HRA and a $5,000 HSA. And Luann, I think I have your email address. I'll copy you when I send that alternate back out.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you. Bye.
Judge, or can I ask Luann,
Yeah.
the difference between the HRA and HSA? The HSA, I understand, is a savings account, so that's something that you would participate in on a monthly basis and do it. How does that, the two different in the way they function?
So the HSA account has no copays associated with it. So if the lowest one that he has is a 5,100% plan, that means that the employee will pay everything up until they're out $5,000, then it pays at 100%. Then you can come in and do the same thing you're doing on what I call your copay plan and put an HRA like a deductible offset. So if you don't want the employees to be responsible for the full $5,000 and say you reduced it to $1,000, your HRA would be that difference between the 5 and the 1.
It kicks in
And will it pay to the HSA, pay the money into the HSA too?
No, that's completely separate. So you have the HSA plan. If you wanted to layer it with an HRA, like a deductible offset, then you can either make a contribution into somebody's HSA account, but you also give them their ability to put in money into their HSA account.
I see.
So let's just use an example for maybe some of these younger folks that are healthy, maybe don't use the insurance very much. Typically what I'm hoping when Brian comes back with these numbers, it's going to be at a lower cost, which not only does it lower the cost for the employee portion, but it would lower the cost for the dependents. And so then they could choose, if y'all wanted to do this, choose an HSA, you know, not, you know, as far as a dual option is what I'm trying to say, then an employee can say, okay, I want the lower premium, but I'm willing to sacrifice my co-pays and go to an HSA plan. That's what I personally do. You know, I'm blessed. I don't have to go to the doctor very often. So I chose the HSA plan because I could care less about co-pays and things like that. Because again, I don't utilize it, but I chose that plan because it has the lower premium.
Right. And do you contribute to that HSA
Absolutely.
up to that $5,000 level? Is that?
The IRS determines what the level is on the HSA contributions.
There are some, but not, no, you don't set them.
I don't set them. No, the IRS sets them every year.
So,
But does the employee say, I'm only gonna put $1,500 in it?
Absolutely. The employee can say, just like you do in your retirement, I can put $10 a paycheck, I can put $100 a paycheck. You just can't put any more than And then what the IRS says is the contribution level.
But under that thought process and under that plan, we would open back up the out-of-pocket expense and then let that HSA. So in lieu of having the employee paying $20 towards the increased insurance, which, $20 a month on every employee here would buy down our increase that we saw this year. But in lieu of doing that, they could put the money in an HSA. We could pull back from the amount we're buying down the deductible to and let the HSA then supplement them as needed.
There's all kinds of ways you can do it. And the nice thing about the HSA account, it's not a use it or lose it like your flex money.
Right, it's their money.
So you could use it like you do an IRA.
Right.
You put money in there and it's always going to be your money. Nobody's ever going to take that away from you.
And it's pre-tax also.
It is
But
absolutely.
not pre-retirement, I think, is that?
Now that I'm not sure about. Enough about retirement.
Yeah.
It's different.
And just to clarify something you said, in the county's retirement system, we don't select how much it's specified. It's 7% for every employee. So that one is different with us. But the HSA might have some advantages over, you're getting to the year end and you didn't have something done and you're going to lose it in your cafeteria plan.
Yeah.
But I thought we said something earlier, you couldn't have HSA and HRA
You can't have the HSA and a flex.
and a flex.
You can't have the FSA, which is your flexible spending account, and an
That's
HSA.
it, yeah. Knew we lost something in there.
Yeah.
What happens to your HSA, say, at retirement, and you've still got a fund built up there?
It's always your money.
It follows you.
Under age 65, the IRS specifies you can only use the money for medical, dental, and vision expenses. After age 65, you can use it for whatever you want to, and it's just taxed as ordinary income, because remember, you pre-tax the money going in.
Oh, you tax it coming out then after 65.
But it can become retirement for people in those instances.
Absolutely, it can.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear, I would never advocate you guys taking away a copay plan, okay? If you're going to do this, you would want to do something that's a dual option. Don't take the copays away. Give them the option. If you want this over here, because that's the way all of my groups do it. I mean, they say you have a choice, and the folks that might want to save some money on the premium can do it over here.
Right.
Does the HSA draw interest, or is it just?
Absolutely it
Oh,
does.
it does, okay. Whopping .00.
Just like your savings account. If you have a better savings account, you let us know.
They're not any of them real good right now. A little better, but.
Who is the HSA deposited with?
It's your choice.
I mean, is the county controlling it, or is that, would be you all would administer the HSA and the HRA? Or?
Banks are the ones that administer the HSAs. There's a company called HSA Bank. There's a company called Optum. You have a ton of choices for HSAs. Local banks, most all local banks do them.
Okay. Interesting. Well, Judge, I've got 3 more pages of notes now. Here we go.
The more we find out, the less we understand.
Now, Corey, I am under the right train of thought to think that if we consider this $3,000 option and we apply that thought to our current year, that we could understand what that expense would be, what our HRA expenses would be had we been under the higher plan, and get some feel for that cost, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because this could be a relatively commonplace year, at least might even be on the high side, as according to Luann, he was telling us that we're still running 104%. So we understand that we're over our margin, and when they gave us our increase, we were at 107, and he's calling it high to the group. So I feel like what we've reimbursed so far, or for the year 2018, could be a nominal amount, or to be relatively an average amount of what we expect to spend on an HRA.
I would agree with that. We don't have the report yet, do you? No, we're still waiting on the report from TAC on the deductible, the co-insurance, and the ER visits. So we can run you the HRA payout. We have to have that from TAC before we can run that other.
If you're going to talk some, I need you to grab that microphone. They're not going to pick it up the way we are. If you
Wouldn't,
No, it's fine, you're talking, we're glad for that, but I just need you to, you don't have to stand there if you want to.
wouldn't having a few really high-cost claims skew your HRA rather than being spread out over a bunch of things? I would think it would, if I'm thinking about it correctly. That would skew your HRA to the positive. Your HRA would pay out less money.
That's right. Because you only have fewer participants
I'm gonna get this yet if I keep, I stay at it.
getting the reimbursement.
Yeah, right, because once they meet their deductible. Whereas if you had a whole group of people that were having smaller claims, it would work on your HRA a little harder.
But what they had in health savings accounts, you're not going to reimburse.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
it's which end of the seesaw you're on.
If you go over to the doctor, you
But
can do it.
Commissioner Watts, you said something about option 3. Did you mean option 3 or 2 looks like the?
Well, I was just looking at the savings from looking over the higher deductible with the lower cost of the premium, and then having the HRA still pay us back. I think that $700 has become old school, and that we do need to look at an adjustment to that $700 amount, but I would still advocate for the HRA to pick up the difference,
Yeah.
but we determine what that new difference.
New difference would be.
New difference
700 or
would be.
1,000. But the plan 2 actually has lower premiums all the way down in it. It's not a great deal.
But it has an out-of-pocket RX cost of $250, and
Yeah.
I'm not terribly opposed, but I do know that probably most of our employees, even though it's 1/4 of the cost of our expenses, all of our employees are affected by the purchase of medicine.
Correct.
And so that first 250 would have to be, unless, I guess, we reimbursed as a portion of our HRA, which I guess we could, right, Luann? If you meet your 250 deductible on RX prescriptions, then the HR could reimburse somebody $100 or whatever.
Correct. You can set the HRA up any way you want
Okay,
to.
Yeah, so you could
that
bring it
might
back.
be, you might be right, Judge, that
And
might be.
maybe split that with the employees.
Sure.
So it'd be 125 reimbursed and 125 they
And
pay.
the option 2, Judge, does lower your maximum copay.
Yes, sir.
$500.
Yes, sir.
basically, yeah.
So
That may be the
I think where we need to probably have a work session, Luann, is go over
County's average.
how to build a, we rushed into that. It was a good idea. It's worked out financially, but how can we design that so that our
Still better.
employees are aware of their benefits from that plan? I'm not sure everybody understands. And if we introduce an HSA, how do they mesh with each other? That's,
And we still owe you that report that shows what's been paid out on the HRA, because you need to know how many people have met the deductible, how many people have met the co-insurance, how many ER visits, and all that's been paid out.
Right.
yeah. Okay. All right. We do have this down as an action item, but I think we're a long ways away from that.
Gathering information.
But this was very good, and I was pleased with Brian. He was well-spoken, smart, like Ramisha was about.
He came from Blue Cross. He's very good.
I see.
He made losing Remisha a little less.
I was worried about that.
Well, he said, now, he's not going to be, there will be a different agent. Brian's a number 2 guy. He works directly under
Oh,
Quincy.
he's not our guy, in other words.
No.
Well, maybe we can,
That's kind of a board member finger to get him, so, don't count on it all the time. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. You're welcome to stay, but I bet you have other things you could do.
Guys, I'm sorry I was late.
That's all right.
thanks so much, Luann.
Okay, we're down to item number 3 is discuss, excuse me, anyone in the audience have questions about that before we move away from that? You all? Is that how many?
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Anybody got a plan?
Okay. Item 3 is necessary to take action to authorize IT department to renew Farida's backup exec license in the amount of $3,370.65 to be paid from $104.12.31.51 computer software. Mr. Crutchfield.
Yes, sir. This is a renewal on our part of our backup agenda for disaster recovery. License is annual. It's based on the amount of data we can back up. So, pretty standard deal.
Judge, so moved.
Second.
Not too fast.
Well, it's something that,
No, I'm writing it. Y'all are moving along. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay. Any questions, anyone in the audience? Okay, we do have a motion by Commissioner Harvey, a second by Commissioner Beecham to approve the item. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, sir. Okay, item 4 is discuss and consider take action to approve the purchase of 14-foot enclosed trailer for voting equipment transportation at a cost of $1,400 to be shared by the precincts to be paid by transfer from 10409 XXX General Fund contingencies to a line determined by the county auditor. I don't know whose item that is.
It was mine, Judge, and
Okay.
let me give a little background how this came up. Pete Ponce brought it to my attention just because we had the opportunity presented itself, but I had made issue over what we used to move that equipment. I didn't want them any longer moving that expensive voting equipment on a trailer that had expanded metal floor in it.
in the bed of a dump truck is that's usually good.
Well,
that's
that's
pretty
middle
rough,
standard.
too.
It's supposed
So
to, yeah.
I was just concerned, and so Will and Darrell have been gracious enough to unload each time one of their enclosed trailers and let us use it. And of course, we have to go get it and we have to take it back. And it's just a little, I thought this was fairly affordable. I wished it maybe was larger. I really wanted us all to utilize what we could of it, or share in that burden and share in the use of it as well. I just didn't know if it was something that we ought to take a look at. To me, $1,400 was nominal for this kind
Price
of.
for that trailer, I think.
You thought it was?
Well, the sole reason that you put this on the agenda is for delivering and picking up voting equipment. Well,
Very
Bohannon don't have to pay for this trailer.
Well, and I didn't know whether those ad dollars that we spend would.
It's voter, it's simply to get more people registered to vote. She can't spend it on the equipment. But my thought when I saw that, and we were looking into this like a year ago,
Was a red one.
to rent them. Then you've got all 4 precincts, and you rent them, you deliver, and you take the trailer back and you get it when you go pick it up and get it again. But that, if it's going to get used and abused other ways, I personally think, rent the 4 trailers, take them where you need to go. They're probably, what, $30 a day at the most?
Oh, I bet they're more than that.
Judge, I think
I
it
don't
was
think
closer
so.
to $100 by the time you put and I think if you used them 2 and 3 days, the cost would drop, but I think the initial setup, I'm not opposed to that, and I've even checked on that. We had one very close to us, and they no longer carry those, but when they were there, I checked, and it was a little bit pricey, it seemed like, but it protected our equipment if a thunder shower happened, or rain, or anything.
They rent that 1-ton truck with a closed deal on it for $29 a day.
Yeah, and that, even, I guess, coordinated how we do, you could put maybe all of them in one larger truck, enclosed truck.
We had a couple of trailers.
We borrow one of them. We've always used precinct 1 trailer to deliver.
Do you have one, Mark?
Yes.
And do you have one, Lee?
Yep, of our box.
Oh, you borrowed Mark's too. Well, how do y'all, are we just staggering the days? Is that
I'm
the
staggering the time.
Go in 2 different shifts.
So do you load all those machines and then just, or do you go back to the warehouse
Go
and
back
get?
to work.
They won't all fit.
What size is your trailer, Mark?
It's probably about the same size.
This is
Close to
Is it
that.
16?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, 16.
Well, it was just, it sounded,
That's a cheap price for the trailer.
that's what I thought for what it was, and, you know, if it was,
If we were gonna get worried about it, I'd take one too, Judge.
That's what she was here to hear me say.
but so those funds, Judge, only apply to,
Those things directly to do with voter registration or voter education.
so by, I mean, we could put signs on the trailer.
I don't know why that would work. Where do you think you can get us that interpretation?
Not without Lori stabbing me in the.
You did what?
Will, do you have any guests that are artists, or?
From time to time.
Probably.
Well, typically, I'm used to seeing those at a higher rate, and this one caught my attention, and he only brought it to the table because he knew that I no longer would let us use what we were
Well,
currently using.
Commissioner Watts, I'm just gonna make mention that during the Heart of Hell 100, my precinct foreman, Don Farmer, said, boy, it sure would be nice if we had an enclosed trailer to put all this stuff in. So it could be used for more than just one thing. There's several things that we do. This is a very low investment. I don't know why these people are selling a trailer that cheap, but probably a good investment for our county.
But what are you gonna do with all, you're gonna have to load and unload all that stuff for hotter than hell each time you go, twice a year on
Now,
elections,
it goes back to the warehouse.
and it's offloaded.
Let's put it in store.
I'd say the same rental trailer.
So, are you gonna make a motion?
Makes no difference to me, I'm gonna keep borrowing Marge.
Well, it too, yes, I will make the motion that we move forward and share in this.
Okay, I'm trying to look up the rental rates, because I don't see, I can't believe they're that high, that's not a better solution.
I think the daily rate seems like it's very, very fair. It's just the setup, the initial setup for short term it runs that cost up, Judge. I think you can get them for that $29, $39, $49 price daily, but there's some other fees that kick in there on initially when you go to get them that have you paying out about $100 right up the front.
I haven't run into that.
There is a deposit, but you get that
There's a
back.
deposit you
You
get
get
back. Yeah,
I was paying mileage, we rented one, and we were paying that kind of rate, but we had to pay mileage on top of that. And of course, we wouldn't have great mileage here, typically.
No, you don't pay mileage if you got a trailer.
and you rip off rental, you do.
Really?
That's where Jeff must have gone. You're paying mileage on a trailer, you got had.
No, ours was just one of those long-bodied trucks.
Oh, yeah, now those are, yeah. But, okay, we used one of those over the weekend for hotter than hell for the spaghetti thing, and they donated it, but the rental rate, the value they gave on us was just under $300, but I mean, it was the longest one, biggest one they have. So,
Was it a truck?
truck, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can see where, it's typically been an inconvenience for the sheriff's department to have to find or locate one and pull their supplies out and stack it, which they've been gracious to do. But we just are afoot when it comes to delivering that stuff with the high dollar cost of that equipment. I just hate to have it exposed to any elements at all.
Well, but the standard on that equipment says that shouldn't be a problem. Now, that what they're saying, and then maybe what's happening might not be quite the same, but it's built mill standard, and it should take that. But I agree from the safety, security, and all, the enclosed trailer is a far better idea, but that's where I thought we would get some actual rental quotes on those. I'll be glad to do that and bring it back next week to you.
Sure, yeah, because.
We don't know what we're talking about.
Now,
Well, you know, this trailer might not be there next week at $1,400.
That's the only thing that,
You're gonna run over and buy it Saturday, that's what the deal is.
that's the only thing that we might.
I did cross my mind, actually.
There could be another one, I guess, as well.
That sounds like a better deal to me. I make the motion Commissioner Harvey buy it personally and then let us use it.
Use it.
The rental rates on those days will be extremely high.
And I have used my personal trailer to deliver those voting machines before, but it's not always convenient.
Yeah.
Why don't we just buy the dang trailer? It's $1,400.
Yeah.
You already got a motion. I'll second the motion. Now let's vote.
You know, that kind of decision making is not fruitful to the
Let's
long end.
look at the cost of that trailer is $1,400. It's a $4,000 or $5,000 trailer. You got pictures of it? Did it have holes in and
I
stuff?
sent everybody.
I know, but did it look clean? Did you
it's
took the
very
pictures?
clean, yeah. You know,
Yeah, no, it looks good.
Steve Boland was able to find one like that, and I was impressed that he got basically the same deal. Someone bought it to move, and then when they got there, they didn't want it, and they let it go. And I was saying, how can you be so lucky to find a deal? And then this one popped up. So,
Well, did you see Steve's trailer after the storm?
no, did it tear it up bad?
Speeds up pretty good.
It is terrible.
Oh, man.
One side of it looks brand new. The other side looks like, well, you just have to see it to understand. It is terrible.
Well, these people had done the same thing. Apparently, they had moved, and that's why this trailer came into play.
Did you see it, Judge?
After the hailstorm.
No.
No,
The one we're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's a nice little trailer.
It is now.
But it's the object for it to be used theoretically 2 times every other
Theoretically.
year, and sit around does not sound like the best use of any money.
Thing is, Lee, he didn't tell us where it is. You gotta go find it. You gotta go find it.
I would say I thought about, what I initially thought about is that trailer that historically has been used in Precinct 4 to sell it, but we do utilize that trailer to move our barricades and pylons and such, and it is a TxDOT trailer, and that's where it came from, to work under that very thing. So I really, otherwise I would sell it and let us put that money towards this here, but.
Spending a lot of time on this, Judge.
Well, it all starts with a penny.
That's right.
Yep. And you got a motion and a second. We had lots of discussion.
That's good.
But that was how it made its way here. Just, I was thinking that it may be a good alternative for moving that equipment. And outside of that, we typically would not. Now, I know that just like this function this weekend, it was an enclosed trailer could come in very beneficial. And I don't know, there's sandbags or that kind of move is helpful, I guess, too.
Well, if you're going to buy it with general fund contingency, then it's not a precinct access or asset.
It says to be shared by all precincts.
For moving voting equipment.
Yeah.
To be paid for.
But I mean, we could use it for anything.
Oh, from 409.
Yeah.
Let's amend that to be precinct 5.
225.
Yep.
Is that okay, Willie?
Judge, there's a voting account. It's got money in.
We
You
can't
can't use
use it.
that for that.
We already asked.
Can't use that for equipment?
It's got to be for voter education.
Just sitting
registration.
there and looking at us. It's drawing interest.
Is that the one,
Yeah.
Bob, that those ads are paid out of, is the one you're talking about where,
As far as I know, we've never.
Voter education.
That's Chapter 19 funds. The-
He said, as far as I know, we've never spent a dime of it.
but Willie, you would not have heartburn on the precinct 5 exchange for 409?
Court's decision.
Okay. I didn't know why you had suggested this way in lieu of precinct 5.
That's where the money is.
Okay.
So your motion changes that to 225 XXX.
You gotta say it out loud.
Yes, to change to the precinct 5 funds instead of 409,
Okay.
and we're certainly willing, if we want to leave the trailer at precinct 3 at Variette Place, it makes it easier.
Oh, we got a place at precinct 2.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, not a problem.
Somebody back into it.
Anybody else got any great wisdom to contribute?
Word.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Watts, a second by Commissioner Harvey to purchase the trailer for $1,400 utilizing precinct 5 funds.
You did ask for comments, didn't you?
Yes?
What do you think we've been doing?
Yeah, but I was asking the intelligent people for comments.
Well, they were talking.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, aye.
I'm gonna ask my legal counsel if I can be abused, but.
Well, I don't know, there's 2 judges have had to go make trips for.
Can you do?
One commissioner, the other one hit one.
That's not, we're not gonna
The
go
county
that far.
judge?
Yeah,
We're not gonna go that.
and actually, I think he got, the one that actually hit him got it justified.
Yeah, doesn't mean he wasn't right.
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah.
I guess we're
All
blessed.
right, item number 5 should go through. Discuss, consider, take action to phase out the grandfathered employees' dependent insurance benefits over 5 years. Commissioner Beecham.
Yes, Judge, this is the same thing we had on the agenda last week, to have an additional week to take a look at facts and figures. We've had a week to look at them. I would go back to the same handout that I handed out last week. I've amended it just slightly. Looking at the realistic
Is it in here, or is this this?
The realistic attrition rate, I believe we can predict as being additional 4 per year off of the rolls. With that, if you look at the bottom number that's highlighted in gray, I would make the motion that we fund next year at $68,000.
Okay. Let me ask you a question before you make that motion, because we asked the auditor's office to furnish us some information. Is this this is
I had
your
no
spreadsheet?
additional information.
We haven't seen that information yet from Corey as to, but we know that the plan cost is $104,000. And Mark's motion is to fund only $67,000 towards that function.
Next year.
That means that the employee immediately is going to be seeing an increase in cost.
Sure.
But
Looks like his plan shows first year, we're gonna do 68,000, then next year 39, next year 18,500, then the next year 5,800, and we'd be done.
We'd have a total expenditure of $131,000.
Right, so it's up $7,773 a year, additional per year.
So the price tag is 131,474 as opposed to
100,205.
Well, now, Mark, on the 131 is included in that 104 is included in the 131, correct?
Yes, that's
We're only
starting
talking
next
about
year.
25,000 additional dollars. But starting next year, that
Yeah,
employee is going to see a jump in their cost. And it's going to really increase in 2020.
got an email from our auditor this morning that I read, and she highly recommended we did not take this method right here. I don't know why.
Well, one of the things that I think that we're going to see by doing this plan that we won't under how we currently stand is that the minute that these costs kick in for those that are paying it, they're going to get off the plan. So we're going to see, I feel like, a greater and faster paced attrition happen because all of a sudden, half of what we're paying, just think about it typically that way, just nearly 50% of what they are subsidized today will go away.
If that would be the case, then I would recommend following Commissioner Beecham's plan.
I certainly think that between 2019 and 2020, we'll reduce the participants simply because they'll look for
each year at those
other options.
68.
Okay, but in that email received over the weekend, okay, we talk about this one group getting a benefit no one else is getting. When we talk about raising the uniform allowance from 300 to 500, we're going to spend almost the same amount we're objecting to for the insurance.
No relevance whatsoever, Judge.
Well, maybe in your mind,
no comparison.
No, there is. You're selecting a certain group to spend money on and to raise that amount significantly.
Because we require them to purchase them. We require it.
We don't
give them an option.
The sheriff requires that.
That's us.
Well, okay. But how do you justify that? And, okay, everybody else has to wear clothes to work. You know, we're not doing that for everybody.
Won't you go get with the IRS, and then you can come back and give your speech? That's the same speech that the auditor gives us. So, don't, you know, it's all in the pitch and it's all in the spin.
Well, yeah,
here's the deal. We require those people to buy those uniforms. We require them to buy those uniforms. Am I right, Sheriff?
Is that correct?
Okay, the cost of those uniforms 20 years ago is more now than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, they were getting $300.
You need to get a show and talk on economics.
I'm telling you, boss, you cannot, that has no relevance to what you're talking about.
No, it doesn't, because you don't want to hear it, but it is.
I'm telling you, it's all in the pitch.
A select group of people. That's what the email pointed out.
How do the people in the jail benefit from purchasing uniforms?
They're not benefited at all.
They're not benefited at all. Yeah, they're wearing those. They get them. I'm just saying, you've got to, the other employees out there, and it's not just that one email I've heard that feedback. I'm just asking whether it's relevant or not. And what you're saying in your mind, it's not. So
there's no comparison, apples and oranges.
I mean, we could forego the entire cost. We could absolutely, if the sheriff would let them wear street clothes to the jail to work in, we could forego the entire cost and do away with it and no one would be affected. But that's not our option. We don't have that availability to us because
it's a security.
It requires them. It is a security issue.
You don't want your employees looking like the inmates.
No.
That is real.
no, the inmates, we need to charge the inmates for their uniforms. That's what we need to do. But
well, Judge, you can make anything relevant, and it's the problem that I've had with this thing from the start has to do with the economics of it. We're not wanting to take any benefit away from anybody. It's the economics of it. What we just spent, an hour and a half in here this morning talking about is this health care cost. That's what it's about.
yeah.
You know, I mean, we could relate it back to anything we buy and any amount of money we spend. Well, it costs more to put a tire on a truck today than it did last year. You know, is that, I don't know. Yeah, I can see where you can make it relevant, but I can see also where it's not very relevant.
No, and I understand that fully. But I thought, you know, there was some reasoning given behind it. I thought it deserved being aired. I'm not trying much. You know, I follow the deal, and I don't see, there's not a way around the uniforms. And the unfortunate thing, even at $500 a year, and that being part of payroll, if we get a full staff of jail personnel, then that overtime amount is going to go down some. Now, if you look at some of the figures in the years previous, that extra 24 cents an hour is going to be some real money, especially when it becomes 36 at overtime. So, you know, it is what it is.
It is. Judge, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Is the motion on the floor that we spend a maximum of $131,474?
Well, Commissioner Beecham said he'd make that. I just wanted to ask one other question.
Yeah, okay.
If we do this plan, we are going to, Commissioner Watts, you're right, we're going to knock people off the first year. They might survive the first year of premiums. Their second year is probably going to take them completely out. I would really ask the court to do a 5-year, 20% a year plan instead of, this one is still too steep. And even the 20% might be still too steep, but it's not going to cost us that much more money. And I think that would just be a more fair way to approach doing it.
Do you have a number, Judge?
Well, we'd pay $80,000 the first year, $60,000 the second, $40,000 the third,
40 and 17.
$20,000, and then $0.
Starting in 19?
Yes. So you're right at $200,000.
Okay.
Just, you know, and I think the same thing as Commissioner Watson said about some of them, they'll fall off within a couple of years because they can't afford it.
I go back again to, it gravely concerns me that we do not have a cost reduction plan in place. We're speeding towards, as it stands today, within 5 years, this county can max out on its tax rate. There's it maybe it's going to happen, like there's some magical something it will happen. And so when that happens, when David comes to buy Yukon, the only way he can do it is to remove 2 positions. And we use that money in those positions to buy because we cannot fund over where we're at. This doesn't fix it. This is just part of it. So we worked long and hard last year to make some significant cuts and to not continue the trend. We know the trend is going to be serious cuts. We know that our employees in this county are probably fixing to have to help pay their insurance costs. There's no way around that. I didn't do it. It's not my fault that costs are going through the roof at a far faster pace than what salaries are increasing. We can't fix that. We're not going to be able to fix it. It's going to continue to worsen. And we're going to see that 5-year window of time where we max out and not able to bear these costs. And the first question is going to be asked is, guys, why didn't y'all do something about that? Why? Sheriff's going to say, why do I have to cut hands? And the public's going to say, well, why didn't y'all do something about this? Did y'all not know this was coming? Well, we do know it's coming. We know it right now while we're taking action to spend more money. We know very well in front of us that it's coming like a speeding train at us. And to not be prudent about, and even to take action on this, is irrelevant because we know next year we had sufficed the train. We could always change at that point, but we budgeted what we needed to get through $104,000 next year expenditure. But it is just not prudent to continue a very old, antiquated, nobody else in this entire county pays the same benefit. No one. And for us to sit here on the taxpayer's dime and say we're going to make this Cadillac, continue this Cadillac version of insurance, when we know that there's not a single solitary soul out there that does this kind of thing.
Well, there is.
Antiquated.
All state employees.
Antiquated, Judge. Antiquated.
Okay, I'm just saying, you said there was no one. I can tell you that one right off the bat.
There's nobody in the
Now,
private
I'll choose you a second. We just got $1,400 closer today with an unanticipated expenditure to get into the 86.
That's right, and you know, the problem is that.
I'm trying to be there from now on.
And Wednesday, when we approve payroll, we'll take another big jump toward it, too.
Yeah.
Oh, you've already got, that jump you've already got in there.
I was gonna say, but we're gonna do it, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, your point's well taken, but
You know, and that, I had Will, while I was gone last week, Will worked up, you know, we are some down in overtime, about $300,000 better than where we were at. These proactive approaches that we're utilizing make a big difference. And we have got to continue that, but we know that we have drastic cuts to make. They're not going to be fun. They're not going to be, I don't think any of us wants to have to pay any more than the next person. But unfortunately, that's where we're at.
the good news is, Judge, I think Lee will give $1,500 for the trailer next week.
If we decide we don't want to.
I believe you might be right.
All right. Okay, is there we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to?
All right, let's go back over the motion. Let's
Okay,
make sure we're all
Commissioner Beecham,
on the same
your
page.
motion.
All right. Motion would be to fund it for 131.3 over the next 4 years, declining 68,000 next year, 39,000 the following, 18,500 the following year, and 5,800 the following.
4-year payout.
4-year payout. That would be consistent with the attrition rate of 4 additional per year coming off, so.
So if we don't have the attrition, would you make your budget?
It's still gonna be 131. I mean, we're betting on that attrition rate happening, is all we're doing. So the payout would be this, we're still saying the payout would be the same, the 131.3.
Well, and as it declines, it might accelerate.
It's going,
And
No,
that's
that's
a
not what he
little,
said.
No.
a little
It's
give
going
and
to be
take on each side.
No, I
$131,000.
understand that, but I'm saying it.
the pot,
I'm not talking about
the pot's
that.
gonna be divided amongst who's left in the
Yeah.
pot.
I understand we're less on the.
But if the attrition is better than that,
Yeah.
he's saying that the money still stays the
We're
same.
betting
Yeah,
on
so
that.
then
We're
that's
betting on a number.
They'll come out better off. They're
come out
be
better off.
less.
Right.
That's why I feel certain, based on trends, that we'll hit the 4 per year or better.
It's a compromise. I mean, it makes us spend about 25,000 over 5 years, but bear in mind, cash flow wise, it's better positioned because we were preparing to spend 104 next year, and we're only going to spend 67.8 next year, so
68,
68,000.
Did we have anybody?
rounded it off.
Well, 27 people are roughly going to divide up $40,000 to pay. Now, let me ask you, do we want to do this proportionate to what they're paying or divided equally among?
It's got to be proportionate.
Okay, but the motion needs to cover that too.
Okay. The motion would be 131.3 over 4 years with a proportionate amount going to each participant in the plan.
And Corey, you see that okay in your mind? You see the divvy up of what those new, they would be, we would determine what those would be.
The difference is 17 trailers.
That'd be one per voting precinct.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's,
Not commissioner precinct, voting precinct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
it's a better compromise than what we looked at a little bit last week of going to 100,000 and dividing it up to 20,000 a year.
Yeah, that was 192,000, our calls last week.
No,
Well-
20,000 a year.
Just to use up the 104,000 over 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
This gives a little bit of breathing room in that regard.
But it does bring the pain on quicker.
It does.
But the one, if there's anything good in my mind about it, it does give us a year to see how the market might change. But I still don't, health insurance is not going to be affordable.
It's not,
To
Judge, it's
anybody, I don't believe.
unsustainable.
Well, it's become real obvious, Judge, that we can come back and revisit this at any time.
I think if you just need to go to the doctor, you just need to get arrested, go to jail. But David will take you to the doctor and get you fixed up.
Will pick you up.
The doctor comes to the jail. We don't-
Yeah, there you go. There you
We'll
go.
still charge you $10.
Oh, okay. $10 copay in the jail.
Okay, is there a second to this motion?
Second.
God, that took forever. Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner
Told us
Beecham,
why.
second by Commissioner Arroyo to approve the item as stated, which will then be paid proportionately towards the insurance of each employee's dependents in the total amount of $131,474.67, broken out at the rate of, in 2019, $67,831.26 would be applied to the grandfather dependent insurance cost. The next year would be $39,298.82. The next year, $18,553.06, and the final year of $5,791.54. And those amounts will be then proportioned among those still participating in the plan. Any comments, questions, anyone in the audience?
Can I get a
Yes, sir.
copy of that?
Yes, sir. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Okay. We're down to public comments. Anyone in the audience? Okay, Commissioner Beecham.
Well, finished up a very successful Haunted Hill week. The numbers seem to be up, and I don't think there was any major problems over the weekend. I think everything went smoothly, and just want to thank all the people at the county that volunteered, and plus everyone in general that volunteered, helped out in any way. It was, can't do it without the total involvement of the community. It is truly a community-wide event, and it just shows who we are as a community, that we can come together and put on an event of that magnitude and have people come back each and every year because of our hospitality. So thanks everyone for their involvement.
Commissioner Harvey.
Well, how's our prisoner transfer going? I heard some rumbles that it hadn't worked out too good.
Oh, you talking about when they came back?
Yes, ma'am. We'll start that.
Just a thought. Just a thought.
Anything else?
Mark covered the Haunted House. A lot of work, a lot of fun, a lot of good people. Good for our community. A lot of work. It's a lot of work, though.
A lot of work. It starts over tonight. We have our first meeting for next year tonight.
When are we gonna find out whether or not the county won the first place in the rest stop deal?
Next spring.
What?
Yeah. Next spring.
Is Woody in charge of that committee too?
Commissioner Waller.
No.
Judge, road work's still going on out in the precincts. We're gonna get some chip sealing wrapped up, I think, today, and then we've got some drainage projects and things, so just reminding everybody that our county crews are out working. We get a lot of our work done in the summer, and be careful if you're out driving around and you see a construction project going on, because the guys are right in the middle of it. Just a little heads up of something that's coming up that I got word of about a week ago. The Wichita County Mountain Patrol is going to be hosting a tractor pull in October. And the good news is that they have picked the Wichita County Volunteer Fire Departments as their beneficiary this year. So a lot of the proceeds are going to go to help those guys out. They've had a rough summer, and I think that'll be fantastic. Some of the ticket sales and some of the other special things have gone. So quite proud of those guys for recognizing our volunteer fire department.
And that's a good group that make up that board.
Yes, they've remodeled that facility out there and saved it, really. I mean, that
They did.
facility was in decline, it's available for use, and it's another good community activity,
So we're
so
gonna bring Red Seagull in for Saturday night dance.
could be, you never know, or Lee Harvey, one of the two.
You know, Red Seagull.
They're the same. And our first United Methodist Church in Iowa Park back in our new sanctuary yesterday after a remodel. We're proud of that and had a great service. So, a lot of good things going on in the community.
Very good. Mr. Watts?
Went with 4-H Club Saturday to North Texas Fair in Denton, Texas. A great fair. It reminds you of a larger version of our TO Fair, which is coming up here in just a couple of weeks at Impact. And if you don't get to go and see all the exhibits and the activities, you're missing out. The great fair down there, and I was amazed that every night they try to have a different singer in that's popular, and it was well participated in. There are just a lot of people that came, and large Midway, and of course we'll have that here too, and another good both Texas and Oklahoma participants from 4-H and FFA clubs there, but we had a very good outing. So 4-H is a great project for these kids to participate in, great club. Probably no one outside of FFA, the only one that runs closest to supporting with scholarship dollars when a kiddo is through with school. No one comes close to contributing the kind of scholarship money that these clubs do, or the agencies do towards these kids' colleges. So millions of dollars poured back into Texas kids and USA kids to participating in 4-H and FFA.
Okay. We want to throw a little more on the rest stop. Mr. Harvey, your crew. I had a guy tell me Friday night at the spaghetti dinner that he would be at Rest Stop 5 to eat some of y'all's goodies before he did anything else. He's one of the race officials, but they look forward to that sausage and tortillas and sauerkraut. And
You know something I forgot, Jim, when you said that? We had a guy, his name was Lewis. He was from Yates. He lives in the Metroplex. He come up and he said, "Hey, I'm Lewis, I'm at Yates, and I'm here volunteering." And that sucker worked his little tail off.
well, we told him he had to. They didn't.
That sucker had a great attitude, and he worked hard.
Yeah.
He stayed busy cooking.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mr. Beecham's been on him hard. The other thing, Nancy Gregory and getting everybody organized, and what tickled me is Sherry Jones is still out there, even though she's turning the reins over to Nancy. It's right there, and Kenny Gregory and his DJ set up, and it's just, you know, a great county activity for everybody to be out there and share and do that. And I always take a trailer with me and bring home whoever can't make the other 50 or 25 miles from there. And I had,
Now we can put them in the
Hey,
closed.
there you go.
There's your trailer right there.
yeah, it's not enclosed.
Oh,
You put people in enclosed trailer under that. I know.
now Judge, the other one I'm talking about, it's ideal for that because it's airish, it does have walls on it, but they're expanded metal walls, so keep that in mind.
Well, that's pretty good,
next
yeah.
time.
The other's a lot easier to get in now. At any rate, there were 3 younger people all sitting on the back seat, and I said, "Is this y'all's first time?" They said, "Yes." And I said, "Are you come back next year?" "Oh, yes." I said, "You're going to be in better shape next year." And they all looked pretty fit, but they weren't going to make it any farther. And they said, "We're going to train harder." And one of those guys came from Miami, Florida, and the other 2 were from Austin, were there. And what they were amazed at was the general hospitality. But they were staying at one of the hotels, and the guy, the night guy, and somebody else got up, had them breakfast ready like at 3:30 or 4, had them, packed them a little snack deal to take with them, had sliced water. They said, the guy, "How'd you know?" He said, "Well, I just got on the internet and looked and said, what should you have for, for food and stuff?" So that's what I did. but that's pretty much the norm, and people don't realize that. And then some other people I talked about had stayed, this is the third year to stay at the same people's house. And, but one lady I was talking to at the spaghetti dinner, she said, well, my boss decided to come ride this year, but he didn't tell me about it. So he called us last week and he said, what hotel would you recommend? She said, I'd recommend my guest room. That's it. She said, why didn't you let me know sooner? He said, well, last year I was getting ready to come to the race. He said, I had an accident. He said, I broke my arm and an ankle. And he said, I didn't want to tell you I was coming until I knew I was coming and all. But it's just such a tremendous thing. Sheriff Duke.
I just want to touch base to the committee and Monroe Marshall Committee also. This year was probably the best year I've seen where we had plenty of SAG wagons and medical units, medical pickup units to pick up people, as well as the EMS that was brought in from other areas to stage throughout the county. Before, I remember we used to wait for Highway 25 and 367 and 2384, be waiting for an ambulance to get out there 45 minutes to an hour if we didn't have to fly them back by helicopter on serious head injuries. This year, we had some couple of back crashes in the morning, and then later in the evening as it drug on 240 in the areas that we had several. Most of them cramps related. Of course, when they cramp up, they fall over, hit their head. And I didn't see any kind of bad trauma at the places we were at, or the calls that I went to as well. But the good thing is they had plenty of SAG wagons, and the volunteer fire departments were out there doing SAG wagons as well. But it was just good to see that we had SAG wagons pretty close to us every time we needed one. We had one there.
Sir, I could have swore I saw an ambulance come through our rest stop. But I couldn't quite, it wasn't A&R.
It was Richardson, Texas.
Richardson, Texas.
Yeah.
Oh, they get medical support from all over.
Yeah.
It's not.
All over.
Used to they had the support at the main medical place. Now they're bringing units and a crews up to set out amongst.
But they're bringing the whole ambulance, not just the people.
Right.
Well, you got to have ambulance. Yeah.
I mean, we help from John Peter Smith and, I mean, all over the whole.
Yeah, and that is phenomenal because of the care that you can get to a quick response, because I can tell you, I've personally been on bad wrecks and you have to wait and get a holiday ambulance come up before, with no trees to even EMT on it. It's good to see how that's come together the way it is now. It is so much better for the riders.
They were talking about in the Sunday school class in Burke Brown on I-44, they had a mobile hospital. Had like 4 or 5 tents all blown up, and they were air conditioned, and there was medical people from the Metroplex in them, and it was all volunteers.
Yeah.
It didn't cost anybody anything.
I think that's the same response they put up last year, and they took it down and took it to Hurricane Harvey and had it set back up in record time because they had just put it up and taken it down.
Yeah.
So
It was huge, and it was all air conditioned.
Yeah. No, it's not. So all of that is courtesy of Desert Storm and the last 2 OEI and OEF.
More too, we've got stuff,
Yeah.
Get that as well.
It's a hash unit. Yeah.
Korean War tents, yeah, we've had that before. Yeah,
I found Hawkeye in there if you look for it.
Last week I participated with Judge Baker and Judge-elect Woodruff, who is spending about 1 day a week here with Judge Little, learning what's going on in that office. But I think it's fortunate we're picking up 3 JPs that are all veteran law enforcement officers. They're coming in with good background. Woodruff participated in the discussions there. We had a number of JPs and county judges because it was all on some of the new magistration responsibilities, especially dealing with mental health issues in the county mental health facility, commonly called the jail. So at any rate, everybody else is facing the same problem, Sheriff, you are, and except for those that don't have a jail. And I think sometimes as things go, we're not in a position to not have a jail, but those smaller counties, it's it's saving them what they couldn't deal with because they don't have a doctor. Like one of the judges, he said, not only do I don't have a doctor, I don't even have a veterinarian in my county. And I said, well, usually they don't get dual degrees, so you're going to have to work with that. But it is a problem, and rural health care is a significant problem. I also testified in front of the House Committee on County Affairs and spoke on mental health and jail, the problems we're having there, and with what they're putting on us. Indigent defense. There's a chart from 2000 when we paid solely, the state didn't pay anything. The line very steeply increases up to $290 million being paid by counties and 32 million being paid by the state. And they don't have any solutions.
It's not sustainable, Judge.
And the state, it's about like this other problem. The state telling us all to cut down and not tax more than 2.5%. Guess who cut their appropriation this year for indigent health care by 7% in the state of Texas? They speak with forked tongue. The other thing that was absolutely amazing, I dealt with that committee during the legislative session, and one of their really hostile members, I didn't get to stay until the end. I'd like to call him up and say, are you going to be as nice in session as you were today? Because you were a real jerk last year. But I have a feeling we only saw that good side of him for one day. I don't know. But, they aren't coming with solutions. They're not that are seeming to be beneficial to us. And I don't know whether that was Chairman Sandra Blandack, was Chairman Coleman's products last year. I don't know if they're going to get any revision out of that coming and looking at ways we can deal with that better. They've now established the Chief Justice has established a committee on jail mental health issues. That could be good or bad. We'll have to wait and see.
Judge, one of the things I've noticed by kind of looking around too is I don't think there is anyone right now running for statewide elected office that's not running on the platform of lowering property taxes. I think that's the common thread. And with what the numbers you just put out, it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable.
Yeah, it's something, and we asked them for tools so we could better identify people's resources. And they weren't aware of how do you decide somebody's indigent or not indigent. And they had no clue on that people would sign a sworn statement and hide their resources.
Commissioner Beecham, a prime example of that, somebody claimed the indigent over there at the indigent.
Several times.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about him. I thought it was
the individual driving up in a Hummer and that kind of stuff.
We had a small deviation, but Doug Baker actually prosecuted this one. We got it before we actually got to court. This guy had 4 houses, a couple hundred acres of farmland, and his answer was when we said, you lied. He said, well, I've given that all to my kids. And I said, well, no, they're selling your name. He said, oh, it's in my will. I said, well, you need to hurry up and die. But we did get our money back out of him. But all right, anything else? Okay, it is 12:13 and we're adjourned.